Reconciliation will probably pop up in a lot of news articles. Reconciliation, I've mentioned before, is the idea of reconciling a colonial past with an indigenous reality lived today. And there's different ways of that happening, not only in Canada, but all around the world. But in BC, they're pretty progressive when it comes to this sort of thing in some ways. Maybe that's because they don't have treaties, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. What I'm talking about is the actions to fulfill the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, also called UNDRIP. So there's 89 specific actions that the different ministries will take to make the province better for Indigenous people. BC has a long and interesting history when it comes to colonialism and Indigenous people. So as a step towards reconciliation, here it is. It says, this is a roadmap that builds on the progress we have made, a new way forward, and another important step towards meaningful reconciliation. So UNDRIP requires governments to obtain free, prior, and informed consent before taking actions that affect Indigenous peoples and their lands. Like I've said before, it's interesting to note that British Columbia is mostly unsurrendered territory, if not all of it. I don't think there's any treaties there, not like in Ontario where there are many treaties, especially with Ojibwe people. So BC is doing a lot of things to try to move forward reconciliation with regards to the United Nations Declaration of Rights on Indigenous people. One of those things is going through the Aboriginal Friendship Centres. So the BC government has made a fund for Indigenous safety planning. It is led by an Indigenous organization, the Association of Aboriginal Friendship Centres. It wants to develop province-wide help for Indigenous women and girls. This is related to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The National Inquiry has commitments coming out of the report. So the BC Association of Friendship Centres has $5.34 million in their Path Forward Community Fund to help Indigenous communities and organizations expand safety planning programs. So the eligible projects include support to host planning sessions, culturally appropriate safety training, and healing and cultural supports. As the executive director of the BC Association of Aboriginal Friendship Centres, Leslie Varley, said, "Until now, we've had to go through mainstream organizations to protect and support our women and girls. That clearly hasn't worked for us. Hopefully things will change in the future."